everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Science Friction, a podcast about the journey to overcome design challenges. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 3. We're so happy you're here. I'm your co-host, Avery Brookins, here with my amazing co-host, Adam Spacht. Hey, Adam.
Hey.
Today, we are speaking with Mike Sabo. He's the Chief Program Officer at a medical device company called UN&UP. And he's here to talk with us about his company's robotic system that's under development, and it'll be used to treat abnormal heart rhythms. That system will also include 3 iglide PRT slewing rings from igus. We're really excited to talk with Mike about it. Thanks so much for joining us today, Mike.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join you.
First, does it have a name? I wasn't sure. And second, can you kind of explain to us what it does and how it works?
Sure. So it doesn't have a name yet. That's for marketing people. That's not for engineer types. But we do have a designation, and not surprising, MAG for magnetic, EP for electrophysiology. So yes, the way they treat arrhythmias right now, if they're not going to do it with a drug, is they run a catheter up through the groin into the heart and apply energy at the surface of the heart tissue inside the chambers where they believe is the problem location of the problem signals. They'll apply energy, disrupt the tissue, and hopefully solve the arrhythmia. Right now, that is all done manually. There's somebody with their hands, a doctor, an electrophysiologist, with their hands on the catheter at the groin, and basically doing left, right, bending curves, those kinds of things to touch the different surfaces of the heart. So the approach that we're using is to, instead of using mechanical wires to twist that catheter, we are putting a magnet on the tip of the catheter. And we have an external magnet, our robotic system, which is changing the magnetic fields exterior of the body, projecting them into the body. The way I like to describe it is a compass needle. We've all played with compass needles in elementary school. And if you have a little bar magnet, you can twist that little needle around in space. We are doing the same thing with the tip of the catheter, where the child's bar magnet outside the compass would be our robotic magnet, right? And so we're going to change the orientation of that, and the tip of the device inside the body will respond to that, just like the compass needle would.
It sounds incredibly, number one, incredibly complicated, more than your excellent description. 2, for the patient, it sounds far less invasive and far more accurate than the current technology.
Well, and that is our goal, is to improve outcomes by improving accuracy, getting the doctors to the position where they want, and to be able to do it repeatedly. So the problem with any kind of manual device is you go up, you deliver the therapy, you remap the area, and then you have to, if for some reason you didn't solve the problem, they have to get back to the same position. Well, if you're doing that by hand, that takes a very high level of skill to find that area again. Whereas with a device, if you know in 3D space where you put the tip of that catheter, you can reset your magnetic parameters on your external robot, and you have a much better chance of getting to that spot faster, right? And you don't want the patients under sedation any longer than necessary. These are already long procedures. So to your point, we want to treat these arrhythmias quickly and accurately.
And a device like this, it would be used in just like operating rooms in hospitals, I'm assuming?
Correct. Yes. The goal of our system is to make the device small enough where it can roll into the existing electrophysiology suites that they use for manual devices. So we do not want hospitals to have to make a special accommodation or a special room just for our system. Ideally, we would like to roll it off the pallet, roll it into the surgical suite, allow our kind of pre-program it a little bit to the equipment that's around it, so that we can avoid the X-ray systems and those kinds of things on our robotic arm, and our magnetic field, keep it from interacting with just different pieces of equipment. But other than some software changes, we want to have a very minimal hardware impact from the hospital facilities point of view.
Why magnets?
Magnets are really nice. Having worked with magnets, I guess now since 1993 and working with big ones, I just love magnets, but that's not really the reason. In this particular case, as we all know from MRIs, doctors prefer MRIs because they're non-ionizing radiation, right? So you can, the magnetic fields penetrate the body without having any other interaction with which could be harmful, right? We do, just like an MRI, we do have to contraindicate for patients that have certain installed devices and such, but hospitals are already very familiar with that. You go into any ED and they automatically screen you for, do you have a neurostimulator? Do you have a magnetic implant? Those kinds of things. So again, trying to fit within existing workflows and things that the clinician and hospital staff are already very familiar with.
Mike, I'm guessing the concept sounds very straightforward, very simple. I'm guessing the execution of said concept probably a little bit more challenging than just walking around with a big horseshoe magnet and pulling a probe through a body.
Yes, well, it is really it is an evolution. Again, I worked with similar systems at my previous company, and there are a lot of things that you need to take into account. And it, again, it's not so much pulling with a horseshoe magnet. I kind of led you led you a little bit astray with the simple elementary school analogy, because we ideally we do not want to pull the device. We just want to orient the tip and then have another robotic advancer at the groin, which then advances and retracts mechanically, right? So it's really a combination of electro and mechanical, right? Electromagnetic and mechanical. The other thing that's really important, and this is what is great about the igus product, is we have to be very aware of magnetic interactions, both with external equipment, but also with the internal components that we're making the device from. So, we do not want to distort the field that we're trying to project by having magnetic materials around the magnet that we're using. With the particular bearings that we're using, made from the 300 series stainless steel, they are really great for that because they are not ferromagnetic. And so, they're very strong, very durable, but they serve this key purpose of not distorting the magnetic field, not having interactions with the device that we're trying to make.
And the PRT is nice as it slews. It gives that 360 degree field of movement. And I'm guessing there's some challenge there of making sure that magnetic field is matching the contour of the body or responding to going through different pathways or.
Yes, absolutely. So our intent with this design is to have an active set of sensors at the patient so that we have a model of the field that we're projecting, and then we will be comparing it to the real field, right? And to your point, we are using those PRT bearings to basically, as our bearing surface, to allow us to rotate and translate the magnet as necessary to maintain the desired projected field.
How did you end up going with igus?
I was working with another magnetics company at the time for a totally different application, and we were looking. We had similar issues, right? Similar component specking issues, and we were introduced. I believe it was after a trade show. The igus rep came up and said, "Hey, we have a line of products." A lot of plastics, a lot of low dust plastics that would be great for medical applications. And at the time we were thinking plastic, right? Because you do have a great line of materials in that. And with the PRT, you also have an aluminum version as well as the 300 series stainless. I believe the rep was in Kansas City, Missouri. He came over and basically sat out all your products on our conference room table. And we got out our biggest magnet, and we went around and we physically looked at the interactions right there. And, these lines look good. Hey, this still has a carbon steel pin in it, so not so good there. And really, and we did end up using that product in a clinical trial at the previous company. And so when I started here in 2019, I pretty much knew from the beginning that I was going to be going with igus. I was very familiar with your product lines, already knew you had great customer support and great field reps. And so, yeah, why would I not?
Very cool. And you were saying before that, so do all hospitals use the manual, I think it's electrophysiology catheter method nowadays, or is anyone using this like magnetic field option?
So there are a couple of other devices or a couple other systems that are out there. Some are robotic, where they control those tensioning wires robotically. But the thing is, a lot of these really high-end devices go to comprehensive centers, right? The big centers. And really, from an electrophysiology patient point of view, only about 20% of patients have easy access and end up going to these larger centers. And what we want to do is we want to cost down the product, give it just as many features as what they would find with some of these competitive systems, but be able to penetrate into the smaller hospitals, right? Specifically because we're smaller, we're easier to use, and we fit within their current manual workflow, right? So normally any regional hospital will have an electrophysiology program. If you're in a town of 50,000 people or so, your hospital probably does electrophysiology. You don't necessarily have to go to Chicago or Boston or Los Angeles or whatever. And that's a good thing, because a lot of arrhythmias are relatively straightforward treatments, that they can go in, they're not complex, and they can be done, and my wife is a nurse. So anytime that you can have the patient be closer to home, closer to the family support system, closer to rehabilitation, you're going to have better patient outcomes, right? So we want to design our product really to get it down into those hospitals where the other 80% are being treated. And we want to give those doctors the same tools that they would have if they end up going to Los Angeles or Seattle or whatever.
That's awesome. It's kind of like making the world better for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, and I guess I should start, our company's name, Un&UP, it's there for a reason. It stands for unmet needs and underserved populations. So the technologies that we're developing at Un&UP are really trying to take these really great technologies that are out there and driving them into the patient populations where there are unmet needs and they're underserved, right? Not, just by and large, most of the country is rural, and the age demographic of rural populations tends to be older, right? And they're also the ones that are going to have the community hospitals that they're going to be readily that they're going to have ready access to. So yeah, there's a method to our madness. Well, it's not madness, but anyway.
How does your or Un&UP's robotic system compare to like the more expensive ones that are only at these kind of bigger centers?
Our approach was to fundamentally redesign not only the magnet external to the body, but to redesign the device internal to the body. Again, we've all played with the ruler on elementary school, right? And you can deflect that plastic ruler, and when you let go, it restores. Anytime you're dealing with any kind of polymer material, you have this restoring force. And for the purposes of a navigation, whether it be with these control wires, whether it be with a magnetic tip, you're constantly fighting that restoring force. And so what we looked at were different designs to eliminate, or at least maximize, the mitigation of that restoring force. And when we solved that problem, then it became, aha, now, unlike the larger magnetic electrophysiology systems that are currently out there, we can go with a smaller magnet, right? And when you can go with a smaller magnet, you drive the cost down, right? And you also can fit it within X-ray systems that are already there because they're relatively close to the body. And so then we started seeing all these second order effects. And then we're like, if we push this, we can get 90% or maybe even 100%, obviously it's early in design, but if we can get 90% of the functionality of these high-end systems, but we can get them out there into the smaller hospitals and treat the other 80% of patients, we have ourselves a market. We have ourselves a solution. We're changing lives. And in the medical field, a lot of things are based upon what are called the 510K clearance process at the FDA, which means you need to have a clear predicate. And so if you're designing a guide wire, if you're designing a catheter, those kinds of things, you have a predicate. And so you're working with a restoring force, right? Because your predicates are all going to have this restoring force. Again, from the point of view of a startup, if we have to go down the PMA, which is the approval process where you don't have a predicate, why would you use a predicate? Why would you use all the problems of a predicate if you already know that your regulatory pathway, you're not going to be able to use? Let's just start and solve the problem without those artificial roadblocks, built into your system.
It sounds fascinating, Mike. And I guess, what's the future hold? Is it still further development, clinical trials, or if you're allowed, I'm not trying to be nosy into y'all's business, but what does the future hold for Un&UP in your design?
So Un&UP, as a startup company and as our internal philosophy, we are trying to really take these cutting edge technologies that are out there and use grant dollars from the National Institutes of Health to get these technologies past what we, air quote, science fair stage, right? And get preclinical data, bench data, some animal data, potentially, before we would go to a Series A round, we would also have some funded clinical trials as well, right? So that is kind of our larger philosophical roadmap for this particular product. Right now we've done our bench testing. We also want to keep the FDA up to date, getting their feedback so that we can constantly be adjusting our design history file, so that when they see it officially for the first time, so in a pre-submission meeting, it's a much more informal interaction. But when they see the submission package for the first time, we're confident that we've met their expectations, and they know that they've had this relationship with us. Communication paths are open, and things should go very smoothly. Because again, we're still going to be a startup. And we need to efficiently use our money, and burn rate is money. And if regulatory issues are holding you up, a lot of times your design is complete and you're waiting for pieces of paper. And we really want to marry those two approaches as close as we can, so that we're not only for our Series A investors, we're not only de-risking the technical risk, but we're de-risking the regulatory risks, so that when they move our technology, raise money to move our technology from the preclinical stage to the clinical stage, that we've answered as many questions that we can for them, and hopefully give them a better investment product and a quicker path to commercialization. Because we're Un&UP, right? Unmet needs, underserved populations. Doesn't do us any good to develop technologies and not get them out there to those with the unmet needs. So we want to shorten that timeline as much as possible.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Mike. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
That was Mike Sabo, Chief Program Officer at Un&UP, a medical device company based in St. Louis, Missouri. To learn more about them, visit their website at unandup.com. That's UNANDUP.com. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Science Friction. Zach Davis is our producer, Eddie Equeo is our sound and video engineer, and Kelsey Mariah Orsman is our graphic designer. Adam Spacht is my incredible co-host, and I'm your other co-host, Avery Brookins. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next week.